Hey everybody, Phil here, and today I'm going to look at Turbo. It's been a little bit of a while since I looked at Turbo. I think the last one was Turbo 7. So I'm going to look at Turbo 8, and I'm going to look at how Turbo streams have improved, and I'm going to look at this thing called Turbomorph, which everybody is talking about. I'm going to build a Kanban board application, and that'll be used to show dynamic updates. As usual, the source code's available on GitHub. Probably there's some kind of link in the description. Let me jump into it and I'll be back afterwards. Okay, what we're going to do is what I'm going to do is quickly create the base application that we're going to use for this Turbo 8 demo. So I'm in my Kanban flow directory. I'm going to create a little Kanban board for all you agile folks out there. As usual, this source code will be available on GitHub. Just make sure I'm in the right place. Yes. Okay. So we're going to create a new app called Kanban Flow. Going to use Tailwind. Going to use Prop Shaft. Why not? Going to skip JBuilder, and we're going to skip the tests. So that should quickly go through. And it'll generate everything there and run the bundle. The turbo stimulus are being installed, which is great. Pretty much everything is good to go. Tailwind CSS install. So you can see it's already using the Tailwind CSS -Rails gem. Sync. I'm here. Here I am. So we've got Tailwind CSS gem is already in there. So what I'm going to do inside of the development, I want to gem.env Rails. Don't need to put a group because I'm in a group. Thank you. I'm not going to do tests, so I don't need it in test. And then gem annotate because I like that so much. And then gem JB, which is a JSON builder that replaces JBuilder that I left out. I think that's all the stuff I need. So let's bundle. And we'll do a Rails G annotate install so that we get annotations generated automatically. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use Docker, or Docker Compose to be precise, to host my Redis. I get so tired of having so many Redises and everything like that. So I'm just going to have a Docker compose.yaml, and I'm going to grab this so that you guys don't have to see the pain of me typing. And then you can just create a random port here. Let's 857 sounds good. And that's just a very quick Redis and Redis volume thing. So that's good. You know, Docker Compose. I can show that to you by doing a Docker Compose up -D, and it'll pull down. Probably doesn't need to pull down anything. We can created the Kanban Flow Redis 1. If I go and look at my Docker, there's my Kanban Flow Redis 1 is running there on port 6857. So that's all good. We can hide you. Don't need to ever see you again. So I'll just generate all the things that we need for a Kanban flow. And I'm going to do all of that using scaffolding. And because we've got the JB gem installed, it'll create JSON views that we're not going to use in this demo, but just that they're there. And because we have Tailwind installed, it'll create everything using Tailwind. So what's the first thing? We want a board, right? A Kanban board. If I take a look, I've got this little document that's elements of a Kanban board. And this is just a little document I downloaded from somewhere. So we're going to create something that looks like this, but probably not as pretty. So there's the board. And then inside a board, of course, we have columns, which just have a name and they reference the board that they're in. And then inside the column, there's that JSON JP thing. Inside the column are those blocks that are actually called visual signals. And then we also have on the column is a work in progress limit. How many visual signals can you put into work in progress? You have a commitment point. I'm not actually sure what that is. And a delivery point, which are both on the board. So we've got all of those things, and we're just going to migrate the database. I'm using SQLite 3 for my database because I love it. So all of that's good. Look at this annotated. This is what I love about that annotate gem. So now if we go and take a look at something like board, you can see it's got the schema information right here. So we don't have to remember all the columns that are on. And, you know, because of the way we create models using that scaffold, as we go down, there's no reference to the things below. The things below will have a thing reference to the class above because, you know, it's a hierarchy: board, column, visual signal, and so on. So inside the board, we need to tell it that we have many columns and that we have a commitment point and a delivery point. We look at the column, of course, it knows that it belongs to a board, but it doesn't know, for instance, that it has many visual signals or a work in progress limit. The rest should be okay. Visual signal knows that it belongs to a column. Work in progress limit knows it belongs to a column. Commitment point knows it belongs to the board. And delivery point knows it belongs to the board. So great. All of those things are there. Now what I want to do is change the way that this works. We can run this right now. We should be able to do a foreman apprentice F with Proclum. And we can grab this and go to my browser. And there's Rails. The first thing we want to do is change the roots so that our root goes to boards. So we've got, this is our boards index. So that was pretty fast. Got everything, Tailwind CSS. Let's now just fix these views. And I'll show you what I mean by this. Right now, the way the boards, for instance, view works is the index view will go through and shows all the boards. That's fine. Links to a board and renders the board. We don't want to do that because you know, then it will show the whole board thing. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create an unordered list and put this inside it. And then instead of a P, we're going to just do a list item, put that inside it. And we don't need render board. We link to show the board, and we'll have board.name. That's probably fine. And let's just create a new board. Test board 01. Create a board. Board is created. So there's our test board. So we fixed the index. It's the show that we want to take a look at. So we've got, when we click on this, that's fine. Here we want to see the board, of course. So we rendering board. So when we say render board, it renders these files _board. So that we don't need at all. We're just going to get rid of everything inside. And instead we want to render the board. And I'm not going to put this in because you guys will be here all day. I'll just paste it in it and you'll see. So we've got the board name. We're going to put it at the top inside of an H2. And in here, we're going to have a add new column button that will generate a new column. And then we're going to iterate over how many columns are in the board. And, you know, I can just show you again here. So this is the board. These are the columns. So we're going to iterate over the columns and put them in horizontally like that. And this board column paths, that means in roots, what we need to do inside of boards, we need to nest resource columns, but we only want the create function for now. So that means we can have a board columns path and post to it like this. So I'm going to run this, and we see we've changed the styling and nothing else. And there's one other thing I want to change on the application HTML. I don't like this MX Auto. We're going to do MX2. Everything is MX Auto. MX0, MX0. That'll move it over to there. Now, I'm going to add a column. I want to add one other thing. Area. Let's add my font awesome kit. Yeah, we got the plus, so we can add a column. Let's see if that's going to work. Board must exist. Right. So we're going to change the because we got column name passed in a board ID and a static column name that I've got hard coded in. So let's change the column controller. Grab the board. So find ID, and then we can say at board dot columns, new columns parameter, and go. And it has created thing. And if we go back, there's our column. Looks horrible because that's next thing we want to do is update the columns. So in columns, same kind of thing. We want to update underscore column HTML. We don't want that stuff. What we want is to show the visual signals that are inside the column. So it's the same kind of thing. We're going to do the same kind of pattern. See, it should be here. So column name, and then we're going to have another button which adds a new signal. And so we need to do the same kind of thing in the roots for columns. We need to resources. I don't know what currents are. I guess it doesn't know my crazy. I might have the terminology completely wrong because what do I know about Kanban? So now if we refresh, got a static column name. Not quite sure why that's not in line. Maybe it's just not wide enough. Yeah, that's fine. We do a width 75. I don't really plan out how that's range. Yeah. So we've got static column name, and then we can add a visual signal, and the visual signal is going to have a generic name, and the column must exist. So same kind of thing. Change our visual. Sorry, there's a freaking plane going over. Having about 2 planes a day. Column. So we're going to find the column, do the same kind of thing at column dot visual signals dot new. test board, add a new signal. The signal is created. Let's go back to the board. And there's my thing. And of course, that's a horrible presentation. So now we go to the visual signals _ visual signal. And where's that? It's here. Same kind of thing. We don't want all of this stuff. You want it to look like that. Okay, we've got our basics. I could do, destroy buttons, but it's the same kind of thing. If I add a column here, the column was successfully created, and we've got a static column. So I'm going to, there's other changes I want to make. As we saw when we created a column, it went to that column show. We don't want to do that. So after we create a column, we want to go back to the board. Whoops. Wow. Copy. And update. Also, we'll go back to the board and destroy or redirect to the board. Okay. So now if I create another column, it's refreshed and done that. But the key point there is that it did a refresh, and that's what we're going to talk about using, let's see, visual signals. We want to redirect to at column.board and redirect to visual signal.column.board. So if I add a new thing here, it's going to redirect back here. So we have our little thing all working, but it's all about refreshes. And this is, like a generic Rails app. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, just quickly check my notes here. I believe everything is done and we're ready to start Turbo, which is what I'm going to do in the next video. See you there. All right, so when we left off, we had this, fully functioning Rails app that was very, Rails, every other version. Old version, you click something, it refreshes the page and all the rest of that stuff. And we want to do something a little bit cooler, right? That's why we're here. So we're going to use Turbo Streams. And first I'm going to do it with Turbo Streams, and then later on I'm going to do it with Turbomorph, which is a new thing in Turbo 8, though even Turbo Streams in Turbo 8 is a little bit updated. So what do we need to do to get Turbo Streams working? It's really quite simple. Oh yeah, I got to fix the cable. Cable is the thing that, action cable that messages are sent across. So 16857, I forgot to set the right port here, 16857. So now we have that working. So what do we need to do? It's pretty simple, actually. So first thing we're going to do is when we click this Add Column button, we're going to use TurboStream. So let's go to the Columns controller. And right now we're just redirecting to the board. And if you remember, we redirect to the board and it refreshes. And we've got the new column, just like the old days. But let's do this. Respond to format HTML. Let's leave it the old way. Redirect to the board. But with Turbo Stream, let's first get a new branch here. Git checkout -b Turbo Streams. There we go. So we're going to use Turbo Stream. What that means is when we create, it's going to look for a view inside of columns that is called create.turbostream.erb. So it's, the action, the format, and then the templating language. And our TurboStream template is pretty simple. Just going to do like this. We're going to append to the thing that has this DOM ID, and then we'll render a new column. And as we learned before, when we render a column like that, it's just going to call the same HTML that it calls for everything else. Issue is that, right? So we need to find that thing. And what we do is we go to the underscore column. Right now we have the DOM ID of the column, which so here. So the whole thing is wrapped in something that'll be an ID, column underscore 1 or whatever it is. But oops, that's totally right. What we want to do is in the board. No. What am I doing here? Sorry. We are adding a new column. So on the board, we want to add to the columns. So we go to the board. The board has an ID of board underscore whatever. But in here is where we want to add columns, right? Just in the columns section. So this has no ID right now. So let's copy the ID. And this is a cool thing. I don't know if you knew you could do this. You can say DOM ID board, and then you can add other information, kind of building up a kind of ID. And if we refresh the page, is it running? So look at me. Okay, good. If we refresh the page, and if we view our source, we'll see it has now a column ID of columns board 1. And then, so our columns controller, we're going to get a TurboStream request, and TurboStream is going to say columns in board, whatever it is, render the new column. And then there's one thing I want to fix. I will see here. Where does it show? I don't like this width thing. So let's refresh. Got that. Now when I click, now remember, I'm not doing the nice pop-up that lets you enter a name and all that. So there. And that's being done using TurboStreams. And if we look at the Java, the thing I love about it, not Java, if we look at the network traffic, when I click this, look at it, it's tiny, 2K, right? Because all that's sending back is that TurboStream action of append, tells it where to append, and says stick in that, which is this. And we can do the same thing for the visual signal. Now that we've seen how it works, we just go to the visual signals controller, get rid of that. Let's do a respond to format. The HTML format.turbostream. That's all we need there. And in the Visual Signals thing, we're going to do a create.turbostream.erb. And let's just grab that one, which is the one from columns. And what we're going to do is we're going to say the visual signal that we just created, column, signals we'll call it, and we'll render the visual signal. And that means that on the column now, we need to add a div here, div, put that up, and we're going to put, so this is a wrapper of all visual signals, not an individual visual signal. So we're going to column visual signals. So now we have a wrapper around all the visual signals, and we can just check our new visual signal in there. And notice I know I am going to have to refresh, aren't I, because I changed that. But if I add it here, Dun, 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 dun. It didn't work because you created a visual signal. You can see it didn't broadcast anything on the turbo string. I left something out, didn't I? Create the turbo string, add the ID to the column, update the controller. I did that. Did I put that in the wrong place? Create turbo string. It's too even to look. If we refresh, it did create it. Format turbo string. Signals column 2. That's how tricked myself, didn't I? Signals. And did I not do that right? Here, I said visual signals. Visual signals is right, isn't it? Shouldn't be so cheap. Some characters. So there we go. Visual signals. That's right. Let's refresh. And let's add a new one here. Let's clear this so we can see. And you can see this is 1.4K, and we've got the new static column there. Nice. So that's it. That's all you need to do. I made a mistake there because I typed the wrong thing. But that's all you need to do to get Turbo Streams working, to send these tiny little update packets, and if you wanted to change more things, like a count, let's do that. If I have my column name, then I'll do a bracket of column visual signals count. And you see if I add one here, that doesn't update. But if I wanted to, I could, again, wrap this thing in a div here, and you can say div, put everything inside, give it an ID, maybe call it header, and then in the create turbo string here, we can add another thing in here. Replace column header, and with a visual signal of column, leaves that work. Yeah, and get 3. So there we go. That's the kind of thing you could do. But the one thing that we're going to have a problem with is if somebody else was working on this. Let's say it was multi-user, and I wanted to create, I'm going to get the column first. Let's pretend I'm another user. I'm going to just drag this down so we can see some stuff here. And then we could do column, visual signals, create with a title of film 1. We created it. If I refresh, it's there, but it didn't refresh all by itself. But that's pretty easy to do as well. What we can do in the column is, just before the board, why don't we add here's where we start to use these turbo stream from column. So that means it'll start to listen to a channel about that column. And in the column, we're going to add our broadcast to. I'm not typing this because of my absolutely horrible typing. So we're going to broadcast to the channel for the column. We're just going to broadcast out the column. And if we were doing insert, we would do a prepend, so we'd add it at the front. And the final thing is when we're updating our visual signal, because we also want the column to change, we need to do a touch of true. So that says to the column, you update if I've updated. So we can refresh here. Now I'm going to go back to my thing and just to restart my console. And let's get column find 2. So we got the second one. And let's add a visual signal fill. And there it is. So that means if another user was using the same board and they updated thing, they would update on ours as well. And that not only works for creating, so we like viz, let's just get the visual signal last, viz.update description created by console. So we can update as well. And we can even update the column. We have a column. Yeah. So column dot update the name dream project. And there, that's changed. So pretty simple. This is the kind of turbo stream I love. And I think it's powerful and it's small. It's very small HTML going over the wire. Perfect. But now in Turbo 8, there's something called morphing, and we're going to see what that does and why I don't like it. And that's going to come up next. I might be wearing a different shirt because maybe I'll do that video tomorrow. See you in a minute. Okay, here we are, day 3 of, day 2 of doing Turbo 8 demo here. Today, yes, so the previous segment of this video was me talking about turbo streaming using Turbo 8, and I love the streaming. I really do. It makes very fast, snappy, responsive front ends for Rails built in, and that's even before you get down to doing stuff like stimulus and all that. But what we're going to do now is look at using this new feature, which is called morphing. Now, morphing, they're using another library, JavaScript library, to accomplish this, but basically what it is you have your page DOM, it looks like this, and you have a new page DOM comes in, and it's a little bit different. Some things have changed. So rather than refresh the whole page, we just want to change the little bits that have changed. So you update the DOM to include the bits that have changed. Sounds great. And I've watched 5 or 6 demos now, and, from people with 37 signals and all that, and they all do the same kind of thing, and they all get the same kind of result, which I cannot reproduce. So I'm not quite sure why that is. But we're starting here. This is our, please don't do that. Okay, so I've got my thing that looks like this. I want to delete a couple of those, to be honest. So let's delete last 2 columns. Column last 2 H destroy. Just get my data better. Looks like that. So I've gone back to my main branch, I hope. Git checkout main. Git checkout main. Yes, okay. So I'm on my main branch, which doesn't do anything. This is just the standard Rails after we do the creating the application and the basic stuff. I have to fix that thing that I made the mistake before, which is the cable port. And I also want to fix board show for this. And I'm going to commit these here. Dot commit -m, fix my errors. All right, now let's check out -b Turbomorph. All right, so we created a new branch, and morphing is super simple. So what we need to do, let's run this thing, it's very, very easy. We go to our layout, and we add a single line, which is called turbo refreshes with, and use a method of morph and a scroll of preserve. And so what that will do is when there's a refresh, it will check to see that we're at the same URL. This is very important. I think it's the same base URL. I don't think it matters about parameters, but I'm not sure about that. It'll check to see that base URL is the same. If it is, it will then look at the incoming HTML, compare it to the current HTML, and do the changes, move the little bits over here and there. Also, according to the videos and the documentation, it will preserve your scroll position. This never works for me. I just want to say that right now. I might go and do another check of the videos and so on, but I pretty much copied this line out of it, so it should have worked, but it didn't. So let's refresh our page so that we have this now. And if we look at the, see, we've got all this module preload stuff, which is, and the turbo track. I think that is also it. But certainly for this stuff, it's all the things for morphing. You can forget these. That's because of my Brave blocking something. So, okay, the thing is fine. Let's add one other thing into our models. Board model. We're going to add a broadcast refreshes. And we're going to also add this into our column. And I'm going to add it into visual signal as well. And then the other thing you need to do is make sure that touch is on for your parents in that kind of hierarchy of logical hierarchy of objects. And we have the board, we have the column, we have the visual signal. These things need to touch their parent class or container, so that everything boots up. And that's it. So doing all of that, we just refresh the page, so I don't probably need to. When I add a new column, you can see it didn't refresh the entire page. It just refreshed this segment. So clicking on the button called the columns, so that's a fetch, and which responds with a 302. Because if we look at the code of columns controller, when I do a create, I redirect to the board. And the board is this, right? That's the URL of the board. So I've matched that first criteria, which is it has to be the same URL. So then it's going to look and it's going to just morph the content, and presumably it needs to refresh these things. And also if I add a column here, same thing. It didn't reload. It just morphed that. Now the interesting thing is it didn't need to morph the CSS there. I wonder if I add a column if it needs to do it. No. So maybe the first time for some reason they needed to do that, but after that it doesn't. And you say, this is awesome, right? Because we only had to add like 4 lines, and it's doing it. And by the way, if I go to my container, I don't know what's wrong with me today. I don't think I drink enough coffee. So I'm going to go, and we're just going to find the board. No, we'll just get the last column. So column equals column dot last. And then let's add a visual signal. Fill 01. And it's not there. So I wonder why that is. If I refresh the page, it'll be there. Yeah. And I think it's got to do with this broadcast refreshes. I don't think it really needs that. So I'm going to exit and reload. And let's, the last column, let's add that. Also not doing it. Why is that? Interesting, isn't it? That it's not working. Because you can see that it's calling, I know why. Sorry. To get that working, hopeless. I should re-record this, but I'm not going to. There's one other thing you need to do. We can put that broadcast refreshes back to me. It's this in the show of the board. We need to add in that turbo stream call. And just to make sure I have it absolutely right, I'm going to, and we're not putting it, yes, putting it right here. So we need to listen again. So we're still streaming. In other words, we're still doing the same thing. I don't know why my head is in such a silly spot. So you still need to have the streaming in to, of course, stream the data. Now, let's exit. Column last, column 3, and there's fill 3. So that's all now working. But here's my beef with this. Let's do it again. Let's add a new column. And look, so that's what came back. It sends the whole page back. So it's sending back 12K of data to add that new column. And even if I add just a thing, 13K, it's sending the whole page back just to add the column in there. And the other problem I have with this is not just sending the whole page back, it's calculating the whole page. So if you have a very complex page like a dashboard, let's add just that thing. See, look, it's doing everything. Inserts in the visual signals, but then it selects the boards, it updates all the columns, it then is calling that, because we're doing a redirect, right? So we're essentially rendering the page. So we select all the columns, we compute everything, we get our work and limit progresses, everything, all that stuff. And if you had a, if you had a dashboard with charts and graphs and all the data you needed for that, it would pull all of that in. Now, you could say, Phil, but that should be cached. But not always. And to me, it just seems like not good. So I prefer the turbo streaming method, because if we, if we switch to the other branch, so let's do that. Let's switch to the other branch. Git branch, what do they call it? So let's get status. Let's just everything. Git commit -m morphing. And now let's do a git checkout turbo streams. And let's move around. Okay, and let's exit our thing and rails our thing. And let's refresh our page. Okay, so now we're doing it with just turbo streams. Turbo streams for everything. Let's add a column. Look, it's just sending back that snippet of the column. It's only 2K, because it only sends back that, because it knows that it only needs to send back that. If I add a thing, look, 1.4K, because it knows it only needs to send back that. If I updated other parts of the page, okay, it needs to send those things too, but it only sends what you need, and it only computes what you need. And that's the big issue for me. Let's completely clear this and add a column. Look how short it is. It's simply the columns. So that's my thing. I don't think this Turbomorph is such a great thing. The main selling point seems to be that it preserves your scroll position, which I think is unfortunate that it's not preserved some other way, but I certainly wouldn't switch to Turbomorph just for that. And, okay, you save some lines, but this is software development, guys. We're not supposed to do everything in a single line. So that's my thing. And that's the end of my demo for Turbo 8. Now back to me with a good camera. So that's my naive, incomplete, maybe even incorrect summary of Turbo 8. As I said, I'm not a fan of Morph and how it works. I don't see the huge advantage. Maybe I was doing it wrong. If so, please let me know. If I'm misunderstanding something about it sending back the entire page and calculating the entire page, please let me know, and I'll do a follow-up video, of course. But for me, I'm going to stick with turbo streams. I love those things, and that combined with Stimulus and Hotwire, I think we have such a powerful ecosystem built into Rails. That being said, upcoming, I might be looking at some other front-end frameworks. So hit the like, subscribe, bell notification so you can hear all about that. And I'll be back very soon. Bye for now.